bit like Jay-Z with my hats.
Who's your favourite rapper?
Oh, Pitbull. That's one of my favourites. So that's my first camera. So I'm going to change that. Just to show you my biggest lens ever. So that is my monster. When I got it, I thought, yes! I wanted a big lens like this. This is for water or birds. My photos are important to me and my life.
My name is Wendy O'Carroll, and I am the lady who was fortunate enough to be mother to Oliver Hellowell, a young man with Down syndrome who just happens to be an amazing photographer.
My dad was my first ever photographer I ever worked with. And he was my first that I ever fell in love with.
He wanted to be like Mike, and he wanted to take pictures too. He started with a bridge camera, but very quickly was not happy with that because there's Mike walking around with his massive, great, heavy camera with a huge lens on it, and all of us thinking, well, I don't want this, I want that, I want what he's got.
Now, my pictures are better than any dad stuff. He might laugh at this when he sees it.
We discovered very quickly that he had an eye.
So I wanted to get water fast flowing, and the water was crisp, just like a carpet of silk. The reds are vibrant and that's what people love.
Oliver having Down syndrome definitely has a significant effect on his photography. He takes in and brings to people attention beauty that we are not noticing and have no idea is there.
You know, this is me, my world, my view, and that's my embracing of doing it.
When I had just given birth to Oliver, initially the midwife who was delivering him thought everything was fine, there wasn't a problem, and eventually somebody announced that they felt 95% certain that my baby had Down syndrome. And I was absolutely devastated. I thought my whole world had ended. I envisaged somebody who wouldn't be able to live a full and enjoyable life. But I adored him. He was my baby right from the start. We realised he was going to have open heart surgery, which is quite common. Up to 40-45% of children with Down syndrome are born with a cardiac defect. I was terrified that I would lose him. While I was in hospital, I saw other children who were very poorly in the intensive care ward. There was some children with leukemia who were dying of leukemia and who weren't going to be going home. And I thought, how dare you have felt so sorry for yourself when actually you're going to take your boy home and love him and have a life with him, and there's people here who will never take their child home. You know, how dare you feel so sorry for yourself? And it was at that point, I think, that I determined that not only was he going to survive, but he was going to be amazing. And it turned out he is. I set out to learn a lot about Down syndrome. I didn't want to just have this stereotypical image in my head, which I began to realise quite quickly was incorrect. Because the range of ability and personality amongst people with Down syndrome is just as vast as the range of ability and personality within the ordinary population.
That was my first award. And then we got my Red Kite one.
I always use the word ordinary, never normal, because, you know, who on earth knows what normal is anyway? I think even today the stereotype is still people with Down syndrome will not be very able. I remember a student asking me about a young man with Down syndrome who used to just sort of stand there while they were talking. And he said, it makes us feel a bit awkward. You don't really know what he's, perhaps he's not happy, perhaps he's not enjoying himself with us. And I said, the thing is, he's actually really enjoying just being there with you and listening to what you're saying. When you say to your friend with Down syndrome, hi, how was your weekend? First, he's got to remember all the things that he did and that happened at the weekend. Then he's got to work out which of those you might think are cool or interesting. Then he's got to work out exactly which words he needs to use to explain that to you, put them in the right order and try and make it grammatically correct. And then he's got to make sure that he speaks those words as clearly as he possibly can, so that you understand what he's saying. I said, you do all that in an instant, in a lightning bolt. He has to think about all those things. So actually, it's much easier for him to go, yeah, fine. So the way you can help him is by breaking down your question. And you could start by saying, hi, where were you this weekend? And he can say, and, did you go out? And then he can, so by breaking it down into smaller sections, if you like, that helps him contribute and pass that information across to you. People with Down syndrome, I do feel, have an intrinsic strength. People have referred to it as having an innocence that lasts forever. I wouldn't call it an innocence, but I think there is a vulnerability about their living for now.
Come on, hurry up.
Not really caring an awful lot about yesterday.
So this is my map?
Not really caring an awful lot about tomorrow or in 10 minutes' time either, really. I want my sandwich and I need it now. And just Oliver's way of looking at life is much more in the now. It's much more immediate. And his priorities and things that are important to him are not necessarily the things that are important to you and I. And quite often, we can learn a lot from that.
My mum was like a hero, so she was like inspiration of my life, and they love me. And I think 'cause I'm more different, and so that can build up my strength.
I just wish that there were words I could use that would help people know the secret that I know, and that so many of us know, that actually people with Down syndrome bring something very special to our lives. And they aren't burdened, they're not suffering. The phrase in the news is always suffers from Down syndrome. My son doesn't suffer, he's having a ball. I think it's important that we know it isn't right to strive for perfection, and it isn't best to strive for perfection, because value is not necessarily found in what is perceived to be normal or perfection. That actually we all learn from our young people and our people with disabilities. We learn to be more understanding. We learn to be more patient. The principle is that actually we are all better people for wanting to involve ourselves and help other people in this world. And if we lose that, we lose something that's very basic and valuable and important to us as humans.